What's saying, family? What's saying with it? To all the women and to all the men watching this video, man, I appreciate y'all for tapping in and, listening to what I gotta say in this video today, y'all, as I give y'all another download, another deep, underwater event. Before I get started, I would like to say thank y'all for tuning in, y'all, for all the returning subscribers, y'all, for all the returning, family. This is my channel, but the people who gravitate toward these videos, y'all, I consider y'all one like me, y'all, because there's somewhat of a part in you that sees life in a way like myself. That's why, you're gravitating to watching these videos, or you just like watching the channel, family, because, you're learning from, another person. And, it's always better to learn, y'all, than, to just focus your mind on other things, y'all, because I tell you, the whole point of life, y'all, is to become somewhat of value. Remember, y'all, you want to become value. You don't want to choose or chase it. Value is by working on yourself, and over time, y'all, it will be shown to you. But don't ever rush the process, y'all, because, you're gonna have fun, like I say, building yourself up, y'all. Remember, y'all, the glow. I want to talk about that as well, but this video is necessarily, how to get where you want to go. Let's just say, for all my people who are starting to be these newer content creators, y'all, we are the new creators of this generation, y'all, because, people who have been on this wave for a while already, I'm not saying that they're gonna retire and shit like that, but I'm just reminding y'all that, they're not gonna be able to do this shit forever as how they once did it back then, because they're already seen, or they're already where they want to be at, because they have put time, effort, sweat, and, a lot of sacrifices, towards what they want to be, y'all. So that's why I tell in this video, family, make sure that you are taking time out of your day to figure out what it is, that you want. And when you do, y'all, the power behind that is not about just you saying it or affirming it or writing it down and saying it, verbatim. No, you must believe it. You must actually see that shit in your mind. You know what I'm saying, family? You want to see it, because seeing it in your mind is literally like going in time, or seeing the future in your brain, because what you see shall it be, y'all, because you're the master. So just thinking about your reality, just say, I see myself with 1 billion subscribers, but I see it in my brain, but I'm not there yet. It eventually will come into fruition, y'all, because I'm working my ass off. I don't settle for nothing. I actually want to get far, But you won't get nowhere, y'all. Like I say, if you just try it one time and, say you don't get a result, or say no one's giving you the recognition you want, y'all, you might just give up on yourself, because it's not easy to be somebody of true greatness, y'all. In this video, I want to talk about, because this topic goes hand in hand with negative thoughts, y'all. Remember, if this world lives in negativity, most of it, y'all, well, that's why people haven't took control of their life into the way that they truly want to live it. If you go to any motherfucker right now in this globe, who's considered living, y'all, if you were to ask them right now, would you want to be rich? Would you want to have millions? I'm pretty sure they're going to tell you to your face with a smile, hell yeah, right? But God gives his battles to the strongest soldiers among him. Like they say, y'all, a motherfucker who truly wants to be rich, y'all, is gonna find any way he can to become that, because he doesn't like the current situation that life has given him, So that's why I say, family, work hard now, because if you don't work hard, y'all, well, then you're not gonna get what you want. Even if you're working a job, family, you might have negative thoughts while you're there, or you might just have negative thoughts about yourself in general, y'all. But the key to getting everything you want is to see yourself in the mirror. Just think of it like this, family. Say you weren't in your body, but you were somebody who looked at yourself. How would you want to view that person knowing that you are them? Because think of it like this, y'all. If I truly love myself, know who I am, and I, do the inner work, I heal, and I live my life, pretty much concealed because I'm away from most people, y'all. Well, I know who I am more so than any other body, y'all, because I'm spending time alone. And the loneliness and, the solitude, you figure out what you came down here to do because you're surrounded by just your temple. But let's just say, y'all, for how I look at myself, y'all, I look at myself as a rare gem because most people in this world, y'all, don't want to take the time to work on them. Most people don't want to, choose purpose. Not saying that they do things that cause them to live in pleasure, but I'm just saying most people in this world don't go for their own purpose, y'all, because that's why most people in this world are suffering. They don't want to react because they feel like just sitting down, y'all, is the easiest way out. But reality, y'all, you're just hurting yourself and wasting all that potential because potential's only going to stay within you for so long until you eventually, like I say, let it rot from within because you never tried, you never started, you never even tried to think outside the box for once, So, for all my people smoking this gas right here, that, like I say, we call, a psychoactive, I'm gonna call this a psychoactive memory, y'all, because right here, this enhances you. This gets you to a realm of bliss, y'all, when you know how to use it. You don't just use it to, fucking eat the whole pantry up. And like I say, distract yourself with gaming. No, you want to work your body out. You want to think about the thoughts and the shit that you got to get done. Because remember, y'all, you're still here physically, y'all. So don't let that shit take control of you to where you feel like you got to push everything aside. No, family, because you're letting that plant take over your whole being. Because once you inhale those, fumes, y'all, you're connecting your spirit to that plant. And that's why you feel those effects of it, because you put another spirit inside of your being, y'all. So that's why that high has taken over you and you feel more aware. But not to get off topic, y'all, this, video that I bring to y'all, it's about think positive, man. Try to stay positive as much as you can, y'all. I want you to, think of the good memories you once had. Even if you were in school, even if you had friends back then, even if, life was gravy, whatever made life feel good to you, I want you to think about those same thoughts and study how you felt during that moment, because it's all about how you feel, y'all. Because if you, like I say, are, putting out a good energy about yourself, y'all, well, you're not going to be tempted or worried about the shit around you, y'all, because you're trying to live life accordingly to how you feel. And that's why I say it's always best to feel good, feel light, or just feel free, because you won't feel so down. You won't feel like as if the shit I'm doing is not getting me nowhere, y'all, because even if, say someone like me ain't generating no income, but I'm still impacting your brain, I'm still sparking a change within you, y'all, if you keep coming back to my videos, y'all. I'm inspiring people to, take care of themselves so they can build up a glow, y'all, because the glow is forever, y'all, once you know how to, call upon it. But I like to talk about this video necessarily, y'all, because so many people in this world, y'all, they talk down upon themselves or they talk down upon other people because, they're scared of who they became. So the only way they can hide themselves is by to talk about others or, procrastinating shit like that, y'all. But the truth will come out today, y'all, because most of my videos, I speak from the soul, y'all. I speak from what I endured, what I've experienced, and what I've seen with these two physical retinas, or pupils, you want to call it. But not to really, get off topic, I just want to remind you that in the times that you think negative, remind yourself that I am everywhere I need to be. Some affirmations you would like to say, y'all, is I truly embrace, like I say, my highest potential. I allow myself to flow freely because I am the center of the universe and nothing else, like I say, dictates that, because we all are incarnations of stardust, y'all. Stardust comes from upper and higher realms of consciousness. So, before you want to trust people you don't know and shit, like I say, it's best to trust you and your, intuition, y'all. So that's what I say, family. Protect your mind, because it will help you when you know how to use it properly, family? But yeah, y'all, this was one part of the video, y'all. But just know that when you are thinking down, y'all, it's not because, that's how you see yourself, but probably because you're around people who are, and putting badass energy out. Because remember, not everybody's like you, y'all. Not everybody does the shadow work. Not everybody chooses to, love themselves and stay away from the, society we was taught. Most people endeavor, or they live there because they don't know how to escape. They don't know, like, the work that it takes to work on, But if you're not working, well, then you're truly not living satisfiedly, because let's just say you're living and your brain feels comfortable, well, your body's never comfortable, y'all. More so, you're weakening your body just by not working it out, because you're not trying to build endurance up for, like I said, your body. So just know that this was some, good information to talk about, y'all, because maybe if you start thinking positive, maybe if you start, seeing life in a goodly manner, your manifestations will come a whole lot faster, y'all. And just with you, like I say, calling your energy back and staying on SR, y'all, it's gonna, like I say, if you want to call it, enhance more so, because you have all this energy in you that's just waiting to be called on, I can't really describe the feeling that it gives you, because it makes you hungry. It makes you want to, do so much more than what you thought you once did, because you have so much time on your hands, y'all. For a man who's found his purpose, y'all, I suggest you, if you don't have a family or a woman, screw it. Leave it behind for now, y'all. I'm not saying don't ever put your faith in women. You shouldn't trust them to begin with, y'all, because, you're here for a reason. You had a spiritual awakening, and that's why you question everything. But I'm just saying now, y'all, don't trust everybody, y'all. Not everybody's here to be an ally. Some people are here to be the Axis powers, because, people are going to go off and choose what they see. People are loyal to what they see their brain is, y'all. Not everybody has a strong, sharp brain like yours, because most people are slow. Some people, like I say, they find comfortability all to it, because I understand why you would like comfortability. I like to be comfortable, y'all. But I remind myself that don't get me no fucking where, And that's what I'm trying to remind y'all with, family. That being comfortable, y'all, all it does is, hurt you. And it fucks up your mental, because while you're trying to be something, or while you're trying to get this or that, you're questioning what you're doing now, y'all. And it's like a push and pull effect, because you're pulling on, that comfort, y'all. But you can't push out the best that you want to be, because you don't know where to begin, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So it's best to, sit and talk with God, y'all. You want to build a conversation up with the Most High, because that's another way on how you will see everything fall into, like I say, your lap, y'all. You want to have a better relationship with God, because while you're on this journey, you become more closer to Him, Because, like I say, it's not that people fall out of your life, y'all. They just can't handle authenticness, y'all, because you truly, like I say, embrace being who you are and how you feel in that moment, y'all, because of so much energy that is radiating, not just throughout you, but within you, because you're no longer who you once were, y'all. You're changing, y'all. And that's power, family, because you chose to act and to not let any reaction make you feel down, family. My goal is not to, just give you the information, but my goal is to remind you that everybody has light within them, y'all. If they go in that darkness, to pull the light out, y'all, because, it's hard to, differentiate things, y'all. differentiate if you're not, so more just focused on, the task at hand, y'all. I just dropped a video, y'all, and I'm gonna drop another one because, like I say, if this is the fourth quarter, y'all, I'm gonna kick it high heels off, endless field goals, y'all. I'm going for multiple touchdowns, y'all, because the only person that can do that or provide that is myself, y'all, because I am my own boss. I'm a CEO. I'm purely, sharp, focused, and I'm locked in like a lion who's, protecting his jungle because he's the king of all. That's why he's respected by many and feared by the ones that, like I say, are scared to, embrace themselves, y'all. But this was knowing that in the times you feel down, y'all, it's best to pray about it. It's best to, calm your mind. That's why I say breath work is important, y'all. People, they want to disrespect meditation, but that's because your ego is afraid of change, y'all. Not knowing that meditation actually strengthens every being, every part or fiber within you, y'all, because your body is able to sustain, like I say, pain. Because what happens when you meditate, for example, family, you are building up that energy within you, y'all, so it can scatter around. It's like a ball full of electricity, y'all, that's like this, right? That's how your whole body starts to active, when it starts to function properly, y'all, because that's how we truly were living back then. But as we so-called more and more, fail, we were less beings with evolving because not everybody knows how to properly evolve, That's why, I give it to y'all as a being who truly knows how life is. And say y'all behind this camera, you're like, how do you know that's, what we're supposed to do? How do you know so much about this? Well, that's because, y'all, I've been at your point of view, y'all, where I thought I had many friends. I thought that, maybe if I was to show off or just step on necks out here or just not bully, but, pick on others, y'all, maybe I would feel like everybody else to where you feel good. But in reality, y'all, it was just creating a hole within me, y'all, because I felt like I wasn't truly myself. I felt like I was craving attention or just so much, wanting a reaction, y'all. But that's not helping you, y'all, because you're not evolving. You're not progressing. You're not self-conquering, And that's why I say, man, don't beat yourself up if that's something you do. Say you, are picking on others. Say, you talk down on others. Or you say you might talk down on yourself, y'all. Well, I promise you, y'all, it all starts with, reminding yourself that I'm more than what life taught me I was, y'all. I'm not just a human that was forced upon other people and to be a servant and just to feel like I'm weak as shit with nothing to provide. No. You're the reason why companies are able to even, like I say, receive income, because then again, y'all, there wouldn't be no fucking company in this world, y'all, if y'all consumers weren't, like I say, getting that product, So remember your value, king or queen, or just, even if you are a low vibrational being, y'all, and you like to be called, like I say, a slut, or you want to be called, like I say, a bitch, or let's just say you want to be called a fucking, a pimp, or you want to be called, a thug, or you just want to be called, like I say, these all fucking names that are titles that were, to dumbing you down over time. But I'm gonna call you what you truly are, which is a king and a queen, y'all. But in this world, y'all, you become more so isolated, y'all, because you realize that there's so much people in this world, y'all, that can't provide value because they haven't reached their true valueness yet, y'all. Most people, they look at meditation like it's evil because you haven't, like I say, experienced it yet. You haven't felt what it's like to have all this energy within you that gives you peace, y'all. Energy is living. Remember that. I've said that many times, y'all. And if you want to attract living organisms to the host, y'all, in a positive way, you gotta have, like I say, a generator, which is yours. That is your solar plexus. Like I say, your third chakra, man. Naruto was able to, like I say, use sage mode because he was, you know, practicing the teachings that Jiraiya put upon him, which was to go within you and harvest all that, you know, if you want to call it nature energy, y'all, because Naruto couldn't even do that, y'all, if he wasn't even connected to nature. That's how powerful, you know, that fucking show or anime is, y'all. You might think it's a cartoon, but that's because you've been dumbed down, you know? You don't see life with an open mind. You've been so fucking closed off, and, you know, your third eye has fell so deep that you don't want to give nothing a chance because that's how you are feeling in that moment, y'all. And that's why I'm here to remind you that people, they envy the ones with a glow, or they feel intimidated, or they, you know, their eyes are like this and shit. But that's because, y'all, they don't fully comprehend how the fuck you have that, or how you are shining, and how they are not, y'all. Because people in this world, like I tell you all the time, y'all, they like to, if you want to say, compare and contrast, y'all. So they want to compare themselves to you. And, you know, that's with everything, y'all. Not just money or not just material possessions, but just even how you look. If there's a motherfucker in this world, y'all, who has a chubby face and he, you know, it looks like it's dead, he might compare himself to you because you're glowing. You know, you have becoming a fucking being, or just a speck of the universe, y'all, because it shows in how you walk, it shows in how you talk, it shows in how you are looked at, you know? Your words, they signify power, y'all, because you are someone with so much energy that energy is gonna go somewhere. Especially if the true creator knows who he is, y'all, because, you know, you start despising people who look at you differently, y'all, because if there's many people ain't on this journey, y'all, it's not that they don't want to change because they don't know, but everybody, we all grew up differently, y'all. Some people haven't endured so much to where they question life like this, y'all. And, you know, it's based upon your sign and who you are and what you came down here as, you know. Water signs, not trying to, you know, just distract you, but, you know, if you're a water sign, y'all, you know, you're more in tuned, you're more aware, y'all, because you are more focused on those feelings. You know, those feelings are what enhances your intuition, y'all, once you trust yourself enough, you know. And for the fire signs, y'all, you know, they're action takers, you know. It's not that they're aggressive, but they come off with a boldness to them. And that's why, you know, if you speak to them, y'all, they might just bust your bubble because you think that you know, they're coming off in a needy way, but in reality, y'all, they're just someone that speaks how they feel, y'all, because they're not like a water sign, y'all. So they can't, you know, they don't comprehend what others are saying by a feeling. They more so go off of, you know, what's logical, or just, you know, what's externally, y'all, because, you know, most fire signs, they live externally, y'all, because they like fun, they like, you know, enjoying and traveling, or just being outwards, y'all, because fire is an emblem that's outer, y'all. Remember, y'all, waters, it's a substance that's, you know, if you want to call it within itself, it's a substance that it's, you know, just one body of a shape, which is water. And that's why, you know, the more you go within that water, the deeper you start to feel, or to go, or to get, because water's deep, y'all. Water is, you know, how deep you want to go with it, y'all. And that's why I say, man, if you're a water sign, you know, you can feel me more, but I'm never gonna knock down any other sign, even if you're a fire sign, because, you know, I'm a if you want to call it, I'm a Scorpitarius, family. So I will never knock down no fire sign, you know, even if I try to fuck with you, you know, or, you know, I do fuck with y'all, because I fuck with a lot of fire signs, you know. I love my fire signs, y'all, because, you know, we understand things differently, y'all. And that's even better, because as long as y'all are able to, you know, comprehend and grasp the concept of the message, well then that's all that matters. You know, my Sagittarius in me, y'all, or that Sagittarius in me, the archer's bow, you know how he points up to the sky, right? Well, that's because they're mostly focused on things that's not surface. You know, they crave more than that surface level shit. You know, they want a deep, you know, introgated bond to where they feel like love is, you know, a possession, y'all. You know, that Scorpio in me, it makes me want to take possession of my, you know, my counterpart, because, you know, that's how Scorpios are, y'all. We're calculative, you know, we're smart as fuck, y'all. We know things before you might even know yourself, y'all, because that's how aware a Scorpio is, y'all. A Scorpio, if you want me to give you more detail on that, it's most likely someone that has, you know, studied themselves, y'all. Because we're in the thinking realms, y'all, because we're a thinker, you know. Sagittarius is my fire about me, y'all, is more so focused on outwardly things. So that enhances my Scorpio abilities, y'all, because now I'm thinking about that shit all day, you know, just living and, you know, seeking what I'm trying to be. So in another way, y'all, you can say that that's the reason why I take these messages to the heart, y'all, because since I got that bow backing me up, y'all, well, that's why I give y'all cosmic intellect. That's why, you know, I fight to give y'all this information, y'all, because that Scorpio on me, you know, I don't back down, y'all. You know, I'm a true warrior, y'all, because, you know, Mars is giving me that fire that I need as well, y'all. You know, Scorpio is not just a water sign. They like to, you know, call it a water sign, but that fire is what keeps that water, like I say, if you want to call it rattling or just shaking, because it's not that you're a thinker at heart, you know, but you're so just more so locked in to what it is you're thinking about. And that's why, you know, you are truly someone that is, you know, not necessarily like everybody else, because what everybody's taking action on, what the fuck they think or what the fuck they know life is to be, you're just so much thinking about it all day, trying to come around loopholes, or you're just trying to figure out what can I do that's the best, you know, way out. That's the difference between a Scorpio and a Sagittarius, y'all. The Sagittarius in me, it makes me live and take things out externally more. And that's why I'm giving y'all the message, you know, with no fear, because I have too much fire within me, y'all. I'm not afraid of nothing, you know. I mastered myself by mastering my emotions and controlling who I became, because if nothing goes my way, y'all, it's just the universe telling me that this shit ain't for you. You know, you're on to better things in this world, y'all, instead of focusing on things that's only gonna hold you back or keep you thinking all day. Because, you know, just because I'm a Scorpio, y'all, it can also fuck me up as well, y'all, because I can be too busy just caught up in the day thinking about it all day, you know. And that's why if you are a Scorpio family, I highly advise you to take action, you know. You see it, you know, there's so many Scorpios in this world who have became wealthy, who are smart, who are just someone that you can't fool, because, and they're highly, like I say, inspiring, you know. Most people want to be around a Scorpio, y'all, because they sense realness, you know. We're someone that's not gonna lie to your face, y'all. We'll tell you what it is, and you, even if you are butthurt about it, at least the truth, you know, should alleviate that pain. Because how can we lie, y'all, when we're the ones under the surface seeking true validation, y'all? Something that everybody can't give y'all. And that's why, you know, my sign is heavily appreciated. My Scorpio, you know, Tarius sign is truly appreciated, y'all, because I have that, like I say, duality within me, y'all, where I'm not necessarily just thinking about it, but acting with it as well. And the information is cosmic. You know, if I was asleep, y'all, you know, that's why I'm happy I came down here as these two signs, because if I was sleeping, well, I wouldn't want to do nothing. I would be more so worrying about everybody else. I'll probably be giving y'all different kind of videos, y'all. But shopping and shit like that, or just, you know, going somewhere and, you know, recording me do something, y'all, it's not really, benefiting y'all. I'm entertaining y'all, but I'm not really sparking curiosity or helping your brain, because I'm not here to motivate y'all in a way to where you feel entertained. I don't want you to watch me after you just got off a hard day of work or something like that and you just want to relax. No, I want to make you become unrelaxed. I want to shake you. I want to make you feel like you're not doing enough, because that's what growth and development is, y'all. Someone that's just focusing on becoming better every day, y'all. That's how you win, because you are seeking change. You're trying to become better every fucking day, y'all. That's how you win, y'all. Remember this: consistency, persistency, and longevity. That's how you get there. But this was a video, family. I didn't mean to get off topic. I'm gonna speak about the other signs later in another video, y'all. But for the Scorpios and for the Sagittariuses, two signs that truly adore each other, but two signs that truly get each other as well, y'all. Because that Sagittarius, y'all, it thinks a lot, but it uses that to think and act more so externally. While the Scorpio, he's hiding himself. He's more so thinking about it just as much as the Sag, but he's keeping it to himself, y'all. He's using that information as valuable, gems, because, he wants to move quieter, deadlier, and just out the way to where it ain't got nothing to do with anybody else. Because, a Scorpio, every Scorpio will tell you they want to live life, like I say, in the abyss. They don't want to live on the surface, y'all. They want to be unseen. That's why we're not afraid of ghosts and shit like that. We actually admire things that you can't see, because that just shows you that energy is alive, y'all. As long as you trust yourself. But I'm gonna remind y'all before I get off this video, never give up, man. And remember, if you have negative thoughts, man, cleanse your mind by doing breath work, by speaking positivity over your life. Because it might not be you, but it might be the beings around you, y'all. But love yourself and call it back. And I'll see you on the next video, man. But we rise.